the kid is pretty much in front of the TV nonstop. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Live Your Best Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Whitney Shayo.
And I'm your host, Mr. Shayo.
And we are so excited to have you guys listening because this is the place where you can find encouragement and inspiration and also tips to help your marriage
Just grow and thrive. Because at Live Your Best Marriage, we always believe that every marriage has a chance to be awesome and also to be fulfilling.
That's right. Everybody has the chance to be happy and live a long life together.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere we look, it seems like divorce is happening and it's also encouraged. So we just want to be one of those places where you can come back to and just hear that actually it is possible to stay together and be happy, and just know that we are real people with real problems. We've been together for 13 years and we have 4 children. So we're definitely in the trenches just as much as anyone else is. But we're making the most of it and we are having the time of our lives. We couldn't be happier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes, and if you guys want to connect with us more, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at Whitney Shayo.
And I'm at Pesa Shayo.
Or you can subscribe to the blog at liveyourbestmarriage.com.
Oh, yeah. So what are we talking about today, Whitney?
So, well, with the holidays coming up, I realized that one thing that is super important for couples to show when they're with relatives and they're just at get-togethers and everything is unity.
Okay, so how to show unity?
Yes.
Okay.
Unity for husband and wife is so important because you're just going to be around a lot of different influences this time of year because everybody has their own opinion, their own ideas, and especially if you have kids, it can be really tough sometimes if you want your kids to avoid certain types of food or to have a certain bedtime routine, and other folks that you're spending time with don't really see the big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them will actually insist on just giving your kids the food that you really don't want them to have.
Yes.
And so when those things
because you're being seen as the food Nazi, like you're always like making sure that they only get a certain type of food, and some in-laws or parents or whatever will be like, what's the big deal? It's just a piece of toast, or it's just a piece of greasy steak. Mm-hmm. What's the big deal?
Yeah, absolutely. If you and your spouse and your children are the only family that is vegetarian showing up at a get-together, sometimes it's not easy. And even there was a time when I started restricting sugar for the kids. Yes. I just didn't want them to have as much. And it's not that sweets were completely outlawed or anything like that, but there were just some types of cookies and desserts that I was just like, okay, I think that's definitely going overboard. Mm-hmm. But relatives would always insist on just giving it to the kids.
Because that's their way to show that they love their kid, like your kids.
Right, they love the kids, but also, and they're just having a good time.
Yes. But to you'll end up dealing with the consequences later when the kid comes home and they're all sugared up.
Right. So there's actually 2 consequences. One is you will feel like you're not being listened to, and you'll also feel like your boundaries are being invaded.
Mm-hmm, broken, yes.
But the other consequence is if your kids start having reactions to the food.
Okay.
Which ours almost always do. I mean, the other day we gave bread to our 3-year-old.
It was like most like a roll.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of bread. I don't remember, but she just became really, really hyper after eating this bread. I don't know what was in it. And so Pesa and I are always like really, in case you can't tell, we're always like really particular about what kind of ingredients are in the food that we eat. And so
I learned it from somebody. I,
so
you
we
know,
always look out
there was
for
a
those
time I never
things.
really cared about what ingredients there in the food, but after being around Whitney for 13 years,
It has become a little bit of a concern.
yes.
So yeah, I mean, our 3-year-old had this type of bread. The older kids weren't really affected by it, or they didn't show it, but she just became extremely hyper and really irritable and just really acting out of character. And so the only thing
Like
that was different,
way out of character.
yeah, the only thing that had changed was the bread. That was the only thing different that she had that day. And so it's that really is tough when you're at a party and an in-law or relative insists on, feeding certain types of food to your kids, or even if the food thing doesn't bother you, if you know that it's better for your kids to go to bed at a certain time.
Yes.
And then if they don't, you are the one who is stuck with the consequences of a messed up routine.
Oh, yeah.
But the other folks in the room really don't have to worry about it.
The funny thing is, I had gone to a meeting once, and then this lady, like, she's a grandma, so she was just talking to her friends, but I was able to overhear it. And she was saying that when she's like, when my son makes me mad, when I take the grandkids, I sugar them up so much, give them all the sugary snacks, and then send them back to my son's house, and then he has to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And it sounded really mean, but
right. And so that is definitely not being considerate, because they won't be dealing with those consequences.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with a bedtime routine. If you have older kids, like, well, I guess for us, older is like 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. If a relative says, hey, you don't have to go to bed at 9 p.m., mm-hmm. like what your mom is telling you, then guess what? For the next several nights, my daughter is going to keep saying, I don't have to go to bed at 9.
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be an argument. But if you have a baby, I've also gone through that, where if a baby's sleeping routine is disrupted, they're up a lot during the night, and then I don't sleep at all.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but again, the folks who were in the room just a few hours before that aren't dealing with it.
No,
it was
not.
Their idea
yes.
to stay up later, or it was their idea to drink more soda. Mm-hmm. But guess what? At 3 a.m., they're not there. They're sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
So for husbands and wives, it is so important for you guys to be on the same page.
Yes, to be on the same page.
And it really, it's only fair, I think, that the spouses come together and show unity during situations like that. And these are mild situations. There are other times in life where it's obviously much more severe, like when you have a teenager wanting to go and do activities that you don't feel comfortable with them going to do, and things like that. But the reason why it's just so important is because if one spouse, it feels strongly that certain things need to be done, certain actions need to be taken so that a routine can be kept consistent, and they are the one who suffers through the consequences anyway when things get disrupted. The other spouse, I honestly think they need to empathize and really just show that they're on their side. Because
and but sometimes the problem comes from the fact that the other spouse might want to empathize with you, but they really don't understand what the problem is. So you might be focused on the action, which is go to bed or don't eat this, or but you did not take time to educate the other spouse on why it's important and like what's going on about the why you need to do that action. So at the end, the other spouse doesn't really see the big deal. Like, why do they have to go to bed at this time? Or
And why is she upset?
yes, like
Yeah.
why is she that upset?
That
It's
things
not,
aren't going her way.
yeah, it's not such a big deal anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
And we actually had that happen to us. For many, many years, Peso was going to work during the night as a nurse. And so if I had an issue with the kids during the night, it was kind of hard for him to understand where I was coming from. And now that he's a work from home dad, he sees everything that goes on. Our 10-month-old is not a huge fan of sleeping, at least not during the night. And so now Pesa actually is there every step of the way and can see how frustrating it is to not get enough sleep and just not be able to calm her down. I mean, and it's not even that she's crying, she's just wide awake and wants to play at 4:00 in the morning. She wants to jump on the bed. She wants to get down and walk around. And so now he's like, oh my gosh, if I was at work and then I came home and you told me about this, it would be really hard for me to understand what you went through during the night.
Oh, yeah. And so I wouldn't see what's the big deal. As much as you want to emphasize or empathize with your other spouse, sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I think the other spouse can actually do a better job of helping you understand what they really were really going through, and at the same time you should be able to be more open-minded and see where they're coming from. Yeah.
Exactly, because another issue that comes up is when you get advice from people who don't even have a similar situation to yours. Like, and I mean, this could be coming from anybody. This could be coming from a friend, a coworker, a relative, in-law, whatever.
They like you, they love you.
Yes.
But
they're trying to help, and they're giving you advice on what to do. But if they don't even have kids, or they have one child and you have 4 kids, their advice might not be what you need.
Especially might not be what you need for that exact situation when it comes to raising 4 kids.
Right.
Yes. And this is not to say that you can't read a book on blah blah blah, but it's a different story from reading a book and actually living it.
Yeah.
And there was a time there was a couple who didn't have any kids, and I was just talking to them, and they seemed to know a lot about the best way to raise kids, because the wife was a nurse practitioner and she just knew, she had read from the books and she pretty much knew the best way to raise kids. But now talking to them after that she has had a baby, she pretty much says everything she had learned as a nurse practitioner and from the books, most of it is not tied to reality, what she's going through. So basically she had to start learning a new way of raising the kids, not what she had prepared herself by reading all the textbooks, if it makes sense.
Right. And we also have friends who were going through some really difficult behavior problems with their daughter when she was about 9. She would get really, really mad and start throwing these huge tantrums. And I mean, they felt like they had tried so many things, to get her to calm down and just work out this situation. And a mutual friend of ours who's a social worker really tried so hard to help, and she was giving them advice, and it just happens that the social worker was not a parent at the time, but the advice she gave this couple really was not helpful at all, because there was, and the mother told me, she said, there's just such a huge difference between doing something in your career, like taking care of kids as a job, being a social worker, and then there's a huge difference between that and actually living in a house with a child who can't stop screaming.
Yeah.
She's like, those are just so different, and the advice actually made the situation worse.
Oh,
and
really? So what happened?
So I don't remember exactly. This was several years back, but it all just goes back to the point that husband and wife are the ones who can have the most impact on what needs to be done for their household. And the truth is, I mean, we all get advice and tips from everywhere. We're even talking about it in this podcast.
We are also giving you advice right now.
Yeah, we're also giving our point of view. So it's just, there's just this constant flow of information that comes to us. Like, it seems like all day long. There's never a shortage of information. And I just really want to encourage the husbands and wives out there to just really stick together and be strong if you're in a situation that's even similar to the things that we've mentioned. I mean, and it can be the simplest things like, okay, I don't want my kid to have bread.
Okay.
Or I don't want my kid to have candy, or whatever.
It's not
whatever it is.
It's not as simple. If you are a vegetarian, now that's a big deal. No, like a vegan, yeah, that's a big deal.
Right, right. I mean, whatever your preference is, I just really think that it is super important for the couple to come together and also to show unity in front of everyone else, and just remind everybody that you guys are on the same team and you're the ones who make the decisions.
Oh, yeah.
In that house. I mean, it's honestly, like, I've seen this play out so many times where a mom is just really, really particular about what she wants for her kids, and what kind of sleep routine she prefers, what kind of TV time she prefers.
Or even what kind of TV, like TV time, and also the shows that they're going to watch.
Right, yes. Like, so how much TV they can watch, and then also what kind of shows that you're okay with them watching. And again, I mean, I've just seen it play out where relatives really don't think there's any need to be concerned at all. And so they start introducing the kids to all different kinds of shows, or if they're babysitting, the kid is pretty much in front of the TV nonstop. And so honestly, like, the main point is when you're the parent, you are the one who has to suffer through the consequences.
But you see, the way I look at it, and I might be wrong, so instead of looking at it as you are suffering through the consequences, is there a way we can think about it as, what can we do as parents to set the boundaries so that when this happens, at least we know what to say, or we actually have some sort of boundary to say, you know what, I actually don't think it's a good idea for my kid to eat that, or I don't think it's a good idea, in a nice way to say, you know what, I don't think they should be watching that show. And with that way we can we don't feel so helpless and just vulnerable, like, oh, they're just doing things to us, and at the same time there's nothing we can do. Because I remember this has happened when we had gone to Africa, and we had gone to one of my cousin's houses, and they were watching just some music shows, and according to standards that we have in Africa, that was just a music video. No, it was just people dancing, and I just was okay. Was kind of not okay, but it wasn't that bad. But to you, and now I totally see what you're talking about. To Whitney, that was like, can you just explain how crazy that video was?
Okay, I had completely forgotten that even happened. We were in Tanzania, and the show was, I don't even know what it was, but they started dancing, and it was so clear to me from the get-go that the women were pretty much objects. There is no way someone could argue that they were not being objectified, and it was very vulgar. So our two little girls were just sitting there with everyone else in the living room.
But
watching
the whole family from the dad and
the whole family, the husband, the wife, all their kids, they were just watching it like, oh, this is our Friday night show. And I told Pace, I'm like, okay, can you please explain to them that we need to change the channel, like, now? And he did, and then they were kind of surprised.
Yeah.
Like,
because...
But then I could see, like, after a few seconds, the wife kind of knew, like, where I was going with that. But yeah, it's just...
And that's something, it's like culturally different, because I remember being raised in a culture where they, on national TV, I guess that's what's happening now, but here too, but they used to play like songs which right now I think they're way too raunchy or whatever, but the dancing styles were like way just out there, like really raunchy. But that's what was being shown over and over and over, and you don't even question it until you meet my lovely wife.
No, it's not even that. It's just, I mean, seriously.
And I really appreciate, because I never thought about it that way. So it's so important for you to explain, and then
it's not talked about enough. We have 4 daughters. Like, the objectifying of women is not talked about enough. And the whole Playboy Mansion thing, that concept, that was something that men enjoyed at the expense of women.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes.
I just don't see how anyone can even say that was a good idea.
No, it wasn't.
I don't see that. And especially, I really don't want my 4 daughters to grow up thinking that they should be treated like that.
No.
So
I also don't.
So anyway, yeah, the TV show that he brought up a few minutes ago, I wasn't upset or anything, because they were very gracious about it. They changed the show, and that was awesome. But we have had some other situations where we were at relatives, at the home of a relative, and our baby, it seems like Pesa and I always have a baby. It's like we've never not had a baby in our house.
Amen.
And so our baby was I'm always either pregnant or I have a baby.
That's a blessing.
It is. Yeah. It's a huge blessing. We have there are gifts.
Yeah, I just thank God for that.
Yes. We are so fortunate to have our kids.
Amen.
And anyway, one of our babies was very, very tired, and I mean like overly exhausted, because it was a trip that we were on. And so everyone around me in the living room, including Pesa, really did not see a problem. They just did not see why I would need to take her to bed. And so, needless to say, I was up with her like the rest of the night, because she was just so fussy.
So if you had to go through that again, now knowing all these things about setting boundaries, and actually not just being somebody who just goes through things and not set the boundary, what would you have done?
So it wasn't about boundaries.
What was it?
It was about husband and wife being on the same page, because I was trying to set the boundaries, but my in-laws were ignoring it. They were crossing the boundaries. But if I had a husband who actually was on the same page with me, he would have pretty much taken care of that whole situation by the fact that he was siding with me, and it would have been dealt with. The baby would have gone to bed.
So even what would you tell your husband for next time? Because because what we are saying is we want to make it in such a way that we are not we are having like actionable tips, so that if other couples are going through this, they don't feel like, okay, I literally have to choose between spending time with my relatives and also having a crazy night later. What can we do to pretty much set up the boundaries, so that not only do I go to a family event, but at the same time not have like a kid who has been sugared up and just drunk so much soda, which you are against from the beginning, and you knew what will happen.
So the thing is, some relatives are just, and I can't be the only one who knows this. Please tell me I'm not the only one who knows about this. Some relatives will crush your boundaries. You say no soda, and then in front of your face, they start pouring soda for your kid.
Yes.
And, but the thing is, it doesn't matter what they do. It matters what you and your spouse do. If
I think it matters
if only one spouse is talking about it, that's a gone case.
Why is that?
But if both husband and wife actually speak up and say, hey, we really don't want that, then they will stop. They'll quit it, honestly. And that has actually worked for us recently because we've started speaking up together. Mm-hmm. We had a birthday party just a few weeks ago, and the kids were being given a bunch of stuff that we didn't really want them to have. But I said it wasn't a good idea, and then Pesa decided to back me up on that one, and it worked.
Because I also wanted to spend. I wanted to sleep, and I also wanted to be like to sleep well during the night. Because if I didn't back you up,
so
I'll be the one in the doghouse.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, really, regardless of what kind of boundaries you've put up or whether or not your in-laws or your relatives or whoever you're spending time with honors your boundaries, as long as the couple together is showing unity, that's when you're actually going to see progress in these situations.
Okay.
So, and you'll have a much better outcome.
But what if your husband doesn't show unity or your wife doesn't show? So, for example, if it's me and you are not showing unity, what am I supposed to do?
Well, for many, many years, I was the one telling my mom that I didn't want the kids to have so much extra candy. And all at home, Pesa agreed with me. He also didn't want them to have candy. But when it was time to tell her at her house, he kept quiet. And he told me just a few days ago the reason why is because he wanted to be a peacemaker.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to be the one like arguing and all that stuff. And okay, I understand that. I totally understand the need to feel like you just want to be a peacemaker. But again, if it makes your spouse miserable, please side with them. Please use your voice and just help them set up those boundaries so that life does not become so difficult for them.
And also, what's the priority? Being a peacemaker or because some people actually look at the people who are trying to be a peacemaker as a sign of weakness, and they basically just bulldoze through them because they feel like these people cannot really speak for themselves. Mm-hmm. So to you to me, I might be thinking I'm being a peacemaker. To somebody else, they might be thinking, you know what?
They might just think you're neutral.
Neutral or just somebody they can bulldoze through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. So the bottom line is husband and wife stick together and just let everybody know that you guys actually share the same desire.
Yes.
When it comes to the routine or whatever it is that you're trying to keep in place for your household.
Yes.
Yeah. So folks, thank you so much. Once again, that wraps up another episode of the Live Your Best Marriage. Thanks.
Okay, bye and God bless.
Are you tired of being upset, lonely, feeling empty, or just plain frustrated with your marriage? And no matter how hard you try, you're not getting anywhere, just going in circles? No matter how much you try to make time for one another in your schedule, or how many times you say, I'm sorry, Pesa and I have put together 99 ideas to help you connect with that one special person so that things can start to be more like the way they were before everyday life got in the way and caused the two of you to drift apart. We want you to have 99 ways to show love to your spouse absolutely free. You can find it at 99waystoshowlovetoyourspouse.com. Because here at Live Your Best Marriage, we truly hope that the two of you can move closer together and enjoy the connection that comes from achieving a stronger bond. Again, that's 99 ways to show love to your spouse.com. That's the number 99 ways to show love to your spouse.com.